So I've been thinking about One Piece lately. Wait, no, that's not true. I'm a liar. What I should have said is I haven't stopped thinking about One Piece since I first read it 3 years ago. Binging a series as large as One Piece can be dangerous, because reading this manga will inevitably fill your mind with questions. Questions that, get this, usually lead to more questions. And then even more questions in an endless parade of small details, connections, and good old-fashioned speculation that will turn you into a theory-hungry, crazy person.
Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
Well, at least that has been my experience. I don't even know how to read this series anymore. A major event will be happening in the middle of a chapter, and I'll be busy searching the margins for small references that probably don't matter. Since catching up, I've spent countless hours watching other YouTubers, reading Reddit threads, and diving into wiki pages, trying to make sense of Eiichiro Oda's wonderfully weird world. And the deeper I dive, the more I'm shocked to learn how little is actually concretely known about even some of the earliest plot points in this series. Take devil fruits, for example. They were introduced all the way back in Chapter 1. His name is Luffy, he's made of rubber. How did that happen? You know the rest. But actually, do you? How exactly did Luffy get his powers? The answer seems obvious. He ate a devil fruit. But what exactly is a devil fruit? Don't know. Okay, did it do anything else to him? Yeah, he can't swim now. Okay, why is that? I don't know. Are there any other rules? Oh yeah, you can only eat one devil fruit per person, or else, well, you know, you explode. Oh, that's random. Oda explained all that in the first chapter? Oh no, that was in chapter 385. 385? That late? Oh yeah, and Blackbeard? He has 2 devil fruit powers. Why does he get to have 2? I don't know, but fun fact about him, he can't sleep. Is that even relevant to this conversation? Who's to say? You see, One Piece is full of interlocking threads like these. Story and background details that pull you along through literal centuries and missing centuries of lore, all while not revealing too much at once to keep things fun and mysterious. The most obvious example is what the heck the actual One Piece treasure is, which we still don't know anything about, other than that it exists. Major plot points, like devil fruit powers, go hundreds of chapters without a new juicy tidbit of information. It took over 300 chapters, or the length of Dragon Ball Z, for audiences to learn why no one in One Piece has more than one devil fruit power. And then it took another few hundred chapters for someone to break that rule, from Chapter 1 to Chapter 385 to Chapter 577 and beyond. We're still learning about devil fruit powers, and we got an update on the subject as recently as last year. Their existence is just one of many different plot points that have been carefully maintained by Oda and his team for over 2 decades. Others include the Will of D, the Void Century, Joy Boy, the Final Ancient Weapon, the World Government's true leadership, and whatever the heck actually is Luffy's dream, just to name a few. But here's the problem. Is it even possible for the answers to be as satisfying as the questions? We are in the endgame now. One Piece has officially entered its final saga, and the end of the story is approaching, albeit slowly. Before it ends, we're going to get at least some answers to long-standing questions. And in fact, this process has already started in the most recent arc, Egghead Island. I have some conflicting thoughts about this arc, and also how the last one ended. So, since One Piece is crossing 1100 chapters this month, I figured now is as good a time as any to check in with the series at the start of the end.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
Something I didn't appreciate about One Piece until I read it for myself is just how many different ways audiences can engage with this series. From the outside looking in, One Piece is an action series, made primarily for children and defined, in classic shonen fashion, by its fights. Each arc could be looked at as just a whole lot of rising action before Luffy and the big bad of that story finally hash out their differences by beating the snot out of each other. For years, that's what I thought One Piece was exclusively about, and that misconception led me to believe I wouldn't find the series very interesting because I thought I had seen all of its tricks performed elsewhere in other contemporary series. But every few years, I'd hear some tidbit about the manga that would stick out to me and get stuck in my head. Did you know the One Piece world probably has multiple moons? Did you know several characters have the same middle initial and no one knows why? Did you hear One Piece's true villain finally got revealed? And he's this weird stick thing? What finally pushed me over the edge was hearing the fact that Oda has, for some reason, never drawn a pirate with an eye patch. A fact I ironically first heard about in a video by Super Eye Patch Wolf. Now I lie awake at night thinking about eye patches. Why would Oda exclude the most well-known pirate attire from a series that has featured hundreds of uniquely designed rapscallions? Can you imagine the restraint needed to keep up this little-known quirk for a quarter of a century? And what's crazy is that supposedly he's doing this for a reason, and will eventually meet a character with an eye patch somewhere down the line. I bring all this up to tell you, it has always been about the mysteries to me. That's how I personally engage with this series. Cool fights are cool, great characters are great, but my One Piece heart has always beat the hardest when we get just a little closer to learning something new about this world and the players in it. But I like how Oda handles some of these long-running narrative hooks more than others. For the sake of comparison, let's group One Piece mysteries into two distinct categories: mysteries about the world and mysterious characters. Both have been present in One Piece from the very beginning, literally the first page. I basically have no issues with the first category. World building in One Piece is excellent, and Oda has somehow brilliantly managed to design his world around withholding information until it's relevant. If you don't know, the majority of One Piece's story takes place on the Grand Line. It's a literal line of dangerous islands, and half of those are in the New World, an even more dangerous section of the Grand Line not strictly controlled by the world government. Supposedly, the One Piece treasure lies at the end of this line of islands, but supposedly is doing a lot of work in that statement because we don't really know for sure. Or at least, we didn't know for a long time. We kind of know how the whole thing works now, at least in theory. This setup is brilliant, not just because it sounds like the most interesting setting for an adventure ever, but because it logically justifies why our heroes don't get spoiled on what's ahead. It's simply too hard for that information to travel back to where they started their journeys in much more civilized parts of the world. The New World is dangerous to travel. The people who live there with their secrets and sought-after knowledge tend to stay put, and most people who travel to it don't make it back. Characters like Rayleigh, who have been all over the world, are the exception, not the rule. Characters who seek out this information, like Big Hat Morgan, are usually hampered by the government. This bird newspaper man is now on the run for just printing some of the right facts about what went down in the last couple of arcs. The New World is also mostly governed by pirates, not the world government. So we don't even really have a propaganda-influenced understanding of it either. What's actually out there is just a big question mark until our protagonists see it for themselves. And it's up to them or their rivals to do so because it's too dangerous of a task for anyone else. The last few islands the Straw Hats have visited are defined by how hard they are to even step foot on, let alone uncover their secrets. Egghead Island is the home of the world government's most valued scientist. Vegapunk and his research are protected by giant robots and a laser defense system. Only someone as crazy as Luffy can reach this strange man, and maybe learn a thing or two. Before Egghead, there was Wano, a nation independent from the world government with connections to one of the three ancient weapons, another long-running mystery. Wano's civilization sits at the top of impenetrable waterfalls, and it was controlled by one of the most dangerous pirates in the world, 100 Beast Kaido. Defeating him has been a goal of the Straw Hats since I was a freshman in high school. The conclusion to Wano was nearly 500 chapters and one real-world decade in the making. Before Wano was another Emperor stronghold, Whole Cake Island, and before Whole Cake was Zou, an island on top of an elephant with a population sworn to secrecy. Each of these locations contained really important information relating to some of One Piece's biggest world-building mysteries. But it's not weird that we didn't know that until we reached each one. Their secrets were hoarded by dangerous pirate crews, or closely guarded by their populations, or protected at all costs by the world government, who also plays a huge role in keeping everyone, One Piece audience included, in the dark. One Piece has been running for 26 years, and it can be frustrating to wait that long for answers. But we do learn a little more each arc. When you look at the series as a whole, Oda has been pretty consistent about how he builds on and answers world-building mysteries. There's a pretty clear pattern to it all, which means there's hope for answers to most, if not all of our questions in the future. Most major story arcs focus on a single location, where a group of side characters need the Straw Hats' help to liberate them from the arc's villain. These new characters are usually locals, with deep connections to the islands they live on, and some knowledge about that island's history. There might be a flashback explaining how the island came to be occupied by the arc's villain, or why it's so important to that villain. The MacGuffin the villain is after might be information on one of the 3 ancient weapons, like in Arabasta, Water 7, Fishman Island, and Wano. Sometimes it's a road poneglyph, which are needed to reach the One Piece. This was the case in Zou, Big Mom's vault in Whole Cake Island, and again in Wano at the center of One Piece's version of Mount Fuji. During each arc, one or multiple members of the crew make friends with the locals in need, and agree to fight the good fight on their behalf. That's where the majority of One Piece's focus remains, on some island fighting some big bad. Luffy, our protagonist, usually doesn't care about the histories of the places he visits, but we learn about them anyway, and they always have a habit of tying back to one or multiple interesting factions. During Thriller Bark, we first learned about 3 new warlords back when they were really important. Amazon Lily and Fishman Island taught us more about the Celestial Dragons, Impel Down about the Revolutionaries, Sabadi and Marineford, the Admirals, and the rival pirates. Egghead Island, the manga's current arc, has quickly become a wellspring of new knowledge about long-standing mysteries. So much so that it has become a little tough to parse. Some of these spreads are so packed with information that they honestly have become a bit hard to read. Like, where should my eyes be looking? At the epic rematch between Luffy and Rob Lucy? Or at Vegapunk giving us new theories about devil fruits? Oh my god, please, tell me more.
I need it!
So that's world building. A little dense at times, maybe too spread out for your liking, but incredibly rewarding all the same. Seriously, I could reread this series 15 times and still come away with new theories built solely from information that has always been right in front of us. In addition to providing or promising new information on the Void Century, Devil Fruits, and the world government, Egghead has, through flashbacks, also dished out some new details on some of One Piece's least developed characters. And that brings us pretty neatly to Oda's other favorite narrative hook, the badasses you aren't cool enough to know about yet.
I don't even know who you are.
The spark of rebellious spirit that started this whole damn thing began with the pirate known as Red-Haired Shanks. In my video on the many different ways manga start, I talked about how Oda crafted the perfect first chapter for One Piece. A chapter that manages to teach his audience what being a pirate in this world means, as Luffy learns that very same lesson from Shanks. It's a textbook example on how to hook readers with a basic but engaging opening conflict. And it has surprisingly high stakes and consequences. Shanks sacrifices a lot for Luffy, and you want to see that investment he's making on the next generation pay off. When Shanks departs at the end of this chapter, you want to stick with him, and failing that, you want Luffy to reach their promised reunion as quickly as possible. And that's where the problem lies. Shanks and Luffy are destined to meet again, that much is clear. But if they meet as anything other than equals, it will cheapen everything set up here at the start of One Piece. They cannot meet again until they are true pirate rivals, but Oda has already established Shanks as the ideal pirate to aspire to be like in this chapter, so Luffy can't become his equal too quickly, or there's no story. They have to meet, but they also have to do so at the end of One Piece, or at least close to the end. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but 1100 chapters is a long time for a character to remain mostly inactive or off-screen. Luffy and Shanks' promise is beautiful, but narratively it's a bit of a curse. By locking Shanks away as an in-game character, this chapter adds Shanks to the start of a short but significant list of characters trapped by their own destinies and locked in character jail until it's time for them to have their big moment. Mihawk is the second of these kinds of characters that comes to mind. He's the world's greatest swordsman, but he can't swing his sword against anyone who can actually defend against it, or else Oda runs the risk of making him look too weak before his fated duel with Zoro. So, for over 1,000 chapters, he has to just sit around on a spooky island and frown. We can maybe hear about the cool things he's done in the past, but he can't really fight anyone. He certainly can't lose a duel to anyone, and he cannot die. So he sits around, looks menacing, and that's about it. On the villain side of things, Marine Big Bad Sakazuki killed Ace last time Luffy and he met, so they have a bit of a score to settle. It would be weird if these two characters didn't meet again, but any meeting between them has to have significant consequences to the wider One Piece world. So what has Sakazuki done for the entire back half of the story? Well, he mostly just gives out orders on the phone, has those orders get ignored, and then gets angry in an empty room. My man is suffering. This is a depression beard, and you can't convince me otherwise. It doesn't make much sense to learn anything more about his backstory, or his character in general, until Luffy and he meet again for one final clash of wills. These three characters are interesting, powerful, and yes, mysterious. I want to learn more about them. I want to see them do cool things. But Destiny and a certain mangaka are keeping them in significantly reduced roles until it's their turn for the spotlight. I just hope that time is soon, because it's getting hard to justify why all these super strong figures sit around and seemingly do nothing all day, especially one particular character.
What would you say you do here?
I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
I don't want this video to seem like I'm being overly critical of Oda and One Piece in general. Maintaining a story and cast this large has got to be really, really difficult, and I wouldn't trade what we've gotten so far for sooner resolutions to these mysterious characters and their arcs. I've learned to try not to make a habit of questioning Oda's pacing. Reading the One Piece manga, for the most part, feels like an exciting, lightning-fast experience, despite the series' historic length. For all of the reasons we've covered throughout this video, Oda is great at long-term storytelling, and his manga is a joy to read. But I can't help but feel like the reunion between Luffy and Shanks has been diluted by too many near misses and the recent movie One Piece Film Red. I also wish some other powerful players had more to do besides react to other characters' actions, especially Dragon. It's hard to see how he and these other characters, who have been built up for so long, will be able to meaningfully impact the story in a way that is equal to or greater than fan expectations. Fortunately for me, Oda has been addressing and disproving my exact doubts throughout Egghead Island. In the past 100 chapters, Vegapunk changed from being just a name whispered by characters for 17 years into a fully fleshed out individual who has so much to say and do that he requires 6 extra bodies to get the job done. But the Egghead Island arc doesn't just involve and develop Vegapunk. Big players like Shanks and Blackbeard are finally on the move in this arc. Some of One Piece's oldest and most mysterious villains, like the Five Elders, are actually getting directly involved in the main story. And best of all, the most recent flashback narrative has, I believe, proved that Oda can still tell a compelling backstory for a character who has remained mostly a mystery for almost the entire narrative. If a flashback narrative can fill in all of the gaps and fully develop Kuma into a beloved character in less than 10 chapters, and believe me, I think it certainly has, then maybe there's enough room left in the story to justify all of the hand-sitting that has happened throughout the last 2 years in this world and the last 26 in ours. Given how great Egghead has been so far, until proven otherwise, I'm going to continue to trust Oda to work towards and provide answers, even if those answers take time, and that time drives me a little nutty. I don't know how you all have done this for years and decades. It's only taken 3 years as a weekly reader for me to go completely crazy, but even that process has been really fun. For now, I'll keep reading, rereading, and probably rereading. If occasional ramblings about the greatest pirate manga ever told interest you, please consider subscribing. This video should be coming out on the 3rd anniversary of this channel, which began with a video on One Piece that got way more views than it should have. Just something else I owe to the One Piece fandom, and of course, Oda himself. If you've never seen one of my videos, I've made several on manga, anime, and a variety of other nerdy subjects that might interest you. Either way, thank you for watching and reading along with me. We'll talk again soon.